After 3 days of playing the Bug Strike Back public test server for Grounded, I think I've experienced enough to provide constructive feedback on the overall progression through the game, as well as the newly added armor upgrades. My goal is to point out the areas that feel unbalanced and provide a recommendation for how they could be balanced better to improve the player experience. Before we begin, I want to thank Matthew Campbell and all my other channel members who help make videos like this possible. Let's get started. On the screen now, you're going to see my mediocre art skills that I've put together in Paint. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to start off by illustrating how the game progression feels overall, both before and after upgrade systems were added to the game. So what I did was put this simple little chart together, and basically what it shows is up top is how the game felt before both weapon and armor upgrades were added. We basically started off at the beginning of the game, played through each of the labs, upgraded our gear along the way by just getting higher tier weapon and armor, and that was it. We got through the game pretty quickly, right? After the upgrades were added, there was both weapons and armor. First weapons came, now armor's in this current public test server. And what I feel like is happening right now is that the content of the game is essentially being stretched. So there's the same amount of content as there was, basically, or there would be before these upgrade systems were added. So if you remove the upgrade systems from the game right now and just added the new labs, this line right here would be a little bit longer because a couple things were added, right? Like the Termite Hill was added and stuff like that. But if you remove the armor upgrades and stuff like that, the line would only be a little bit longer. Putting in the upgrades, what ends up happening is you can play along to a certain point and you're going to end up eventually hitting a roadblock. This might happen sooner than later. I don't know exactly where it happens. I did restart a fresh game last night just to see if I could get through the hedge lab. I was able to get through the hedge lab. However, I did so by getting very lucky and completely cheesing it without dying. Somehow no Orb Weaver Jr. spawned, so I didn't end up having to fight any of them. And also, I ended up having half the Tased Tees fall out of the lab to the ground, so I didn't have to fight them. But one of the Tased Tees I fought did almost kill me in 3 hits, but we're going to get more to damage later. But basically what this is going to end up meaning is, especially for a newer player, you're going to end up having to have a hard stop where you're just not going to be able to progress anymore because everything's just going to be killing you. This may happen right at the beginning, depending on if you've never played before. So your experience level may shift this to the left or the right. But eventually you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to stop progressing through the game and you're just have to sit there and grind resources to upgrade your armor and weapons just to get back onto the main content line so that you can end up completing the next lab or the next part of the story. This is going to end up happening again and possibly again. I only put 2 in here for the interest of saving space here, but this could happen repeatedly. And basically what ends up happening is these upgrade systems, while at first glance I thought they were going to be a great addition to the game, and they do add depth to the game, I feel like they are actually just creating roadblocks, or not roadblocks, speed bumps in the path from the beginning to the end of the game, which is just artificially increasing the time it takes to get from point A to point B. That's what I'm getting out of this, and I'm not sure if that was the initial intention. It just feels like this game has gone from being purely a survival game to now it's like a survival RPG, where in RPGs, if you're not familiar, you do spend a lot of time just sitting on the side fighting the same enemies over and over again to level up your gear. In this case, or level up your character. In this case, you're basically just going to be sitting there grinding resources out, and in some cases, they're just mindless grinding, like breaking quartzite or digging up grubs. They're not challenging at all. It's no skill involved in it. It's basically just stopping your progress, spending time, and then just grinding the resources just to be able to progress along. Whereas before, the gear had a natural progression to it. For me, it was pretty simple. I would start the game off. I would craft the basic stone weapons or stone gear weapons that you need at the beginning, or the tools. Then I would craft clover armor. I'd head over to the oak tree and do Burgle's lab or whatever. I'd probably make acorn armor or possibly grub armor. And then eventually my goal would be to get ladybug armor, so then I could get spider armor, and then move on until we were getting to the antlion armor for the sandbox and stuff like that, and perhaps the roly-poly armor, right? Now it's basically, you're just not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to just go from armor to armor because you're not there. The early game armors have like 0 viability. The clover armor has no viability at all. And you basically, what I did when I started fresh yesterday was I went straight to the oak tree, dug up every acorn I could see before the wolf spiders came out on the first day, so that I was able to go back and make myself a full set of acorn armor, because it seemed to be the best armor I could get in the shortest amount of time at the beginning, although it does have some downsides, which we will talk about in just a minute. So with that out of the way, let's get on to what I think is some of the problems with the armor upgrade system. Then we're going to look at bug damage, and then I'm going to look at the overall progression and how I think it could be made better. Over to one of my other favorite programs. This is a spreadsheet here, and I really quickly just want to look at this. Now, I posted this on the Grounded Discord as well as my own Discord, I think the day after the public test server came out. And it's been, other people have shared similar information on Reddit and other places. So there's a good chance you've probably seen this information, but I just really want to highlight how expensive it is to upgrade armor. And I think that's the biggest gripe that most people have right now. Perhaps it's not the fact that armor upgrades were actually added, but the main gripe is that the cost to upgrading them is insane. And as you can see here, on the left is how much it costs to upgrade one piece. On the right is a full set. So just to highlight here, you're going to need a total of 276 grub leather plates to upgrade one armor to max, 90 berry leather plates, and 45 pupil leather plates. The reason you're seeing overlap here is because the berry leather plates require grub leather plates, and the pupil leather plates require berry leather plates, which then require grub leather plates. So you need grub leather plates all the way from 1 to 9. Now, the issue with that is grubs are an absolute pain in the butt to farm. You can get hundreds of berries. I'm going to show you my chest. I'm going to go into my survivor world in a second, and I think if I'm by my house, I'm going to show you the chest I have. I have tons of berry leather by just casually or passively collecting it as I was over by the hedge building a house one day. And pupil leather is not that hard to get, and you don't need that much of it. It's the grubs that are the big grind. And the way this has been implemented is basically putting all of the grind in the beginning of the game. So in order to get any progression into armor, you have to just sit there and dig up grubs all day long. No skill involved in this, like I said. There's also no guarantee because grubs currently drop 0 to 2 hides. So on average, you're going to get 1. That means in order to do a full set, you're going to have to dig up about 110 or 111 grubs, depending on your RNG, in order to upgrade a full set. Now, the other problem is you do not know when you're upgrading the sets, what the bonuses are going to be. With weapons, we kind of knew, although as a new player, you wouldn't know. But with weapons, when you go from levels 1 to 5, it's just giving you more damage and more durability. When you choose your level 6, you can either just get more damage and durability, or you can add one of the candy upgrades to it. That's pretty straightforward. All weapons have the exact same upgrade path with the exception of bows, which can only go mighty. And then some of the specific weapons like the Coltana and the Mint Mace and the Salt Morningstar can only go mighty, but they also have the inherent bonus of having 2 of them. But in general, weapons have a pretty linear path, and then they split off in 4 directions, but they're all the same. For armors, there's a completely different path. When you get to level 6, the options are either bulky or sleek. Bulky just adds, it's basically like the mighty path for weapons. You just get more defense and more durability on your armors. And the sleek path opens up bonuses, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. Now, there's no way to know what the bonuses are until you get to level 6, unless you go online and watch a video or go to the wiki and look it up. So you're basically going to be grinding out, in this example, let's say you just do one piece, you're going to need 32 grub leather plates just to get to the point where you can figure out what's my sleek upgrade. Now, unfortunately, I had this experience where the first day of the public test server, I played it for about 3 hours on stream. I was hoping that the Spider Armor's sleek bonus was going to be something like movement speed or perhaps something to do with stamina. Instead, it was your poison damage does any poison damage you do does more, or basically it multiplies your poison damage. And what this does is completely nullifies my playstyle because I do not use poison in any of my builds. I don't like using poison weapons. I think poison in the game is underwhelming right now. If it were buffed, I would think it would be more viable. As of right now, I have no intention of using poison. In addition to that, poison is completely useless against every spider in the game because they're resistant against it. So most of the more dangerous enemies, poison's completely useless. So what I ended up doing was spending all the resources, all the grubs that I had harvested over the course of a couple days before the public test server, hours grinding out, digging them up, put them into one of my pieces of armor to realize that it had a poor bonus that I did not like, and it just wasted 3 hours of my time that day, plus, well, actually, no, I updated it pretty quickly that day, but it wasted at least 5 to 10 hours of my previous playtime grinding out these resources just to find out. So, as one thing, if we're going to keep armor upgrades in the path as it is now, I think it would make sense to at least show what the sleek bonuses are going to be up front so people can make a decision. But overall, the costs are just way too expensive. And there's a couple ways of dealing with this that we can make it easier. Number one would be to just reduce the amount needed overall, specifically like the grub leather plates, maybe reduce them by 50%, 75%. I would also say a better idea would be to just completely remove the leather scraps from the game. So one of the problems is going to be that you're going to have to turn the grub hide, for example, you have to put it in the grinder to turn it into leather scraps. You have to put the berry leather in the grinder to make berry scraps. You have to put the pupil leather in the grinder to make berry scraps. It's an extra step in the process. And what ends up happening is it's just making the formula longer. Instead of just having grub leather, like as an example, we could just put grub on the jerky rack or craft it in the grub leather like we can with berry and pupa, remove the grinder completely from the equation, and make it much easier. But it's still going to be a pain in the butt because grub leather is a pain in the butt to get. Maybe acorns would have been a better idea. I don't know. Perhaps they can make grubs drop 3 to 4 like every berry does, and they need to make more grubs available and get rid of the damn larva. Sorry, but like going around the oak tree and I'm digging up a grub and then there's a larva next to it and I accidentally dug up the larva at the same time. That's just so annoying. Get rid of the larvas that are burrowing near the oak tree so that players have a spot where they know that they're going to get only larva. I know you can tell the difference in sound, but not everybody knows that. They also changed the sound because before this update or before this public test server, I was digging up grubs 100% of the time and could always ignore the larva. Now the larva make a noise just like the grubs do. It's just a little bit louder. But if you're a regular player, you might not know that. You might never even figure it out after hours of playing it. You might just think, well, I guess it's just random what it is. or if you don't have a headset on, maybe you're listening to something else at the same time. It just makes absolutely no sense to have to dig up grubs and then have half the time they're just larvae anyway. So even though they're spawned all around the oak tree, you might not even get that many. I think in like one of my passes through both the oak tree and around the oak tree, I maybe got like 15 or 20 grub hides total, something like that, the first time I went and did it, which as you can see is just not going to get me, that's not going to get me very far in terms of like upgrading anything. So you need 37 to do an entire path here. It's going to get me what, maybe to level 5 here, but then I need the grinder. So that's another thing that's a problem here, is in addition to these resources, which like I said, I think should be at the very least reduced, and I think there needs to be serious consideration on what to do with the grubs. Grubs either need to be buffed in terms of drop rates, they need to have a guaranteed drop rate of 3 to 4 like the berries do, and they need to be more plentiful, and get rid of the larvae so that when you're digging up the grubs, there's no larvae underground. Just get rid of them, or make them very infrequent, or maybe make them in places like not near the oak tree, not near the starting area where the quartzite is, just places where you can safely go get it at the beginning of the game, and then later on there can be more danger when you're digging it up if you want to do that. Now, the other thing that the problem is here is that you can't even upgrade your armor at the beginning of the game because you have to have a grinder. Now, they did change it so the grinder is not locked behind the Haze Lab chip. You can unlock the grinder by analyzing a flower petal. The only problem is you need crow feathers to make the grinder, which means you need a tier 2 axe, you need the insect axe to get a crow feather to make the grinder. Is there any new player going to be able to figure that out on their own? Probably not. They're going to either have to go online and watch a YouTube tutorial or go on the wiki and figure out what's going on. There's no sense of nothing is intuitive about this upgrade process for both armor and weapons. The smithing station is available right at the beginning. Perhaps if the grinder was available right at the beginning, we could just purchase it, remove the crow feathers, remove any tier 2 parts like they did with the they actually did this with the oven, which we can talk about that later. The oven no longer requires charcoal, so you can actually upgrade your weapons without having to go get charcoal first. They could do something with the grinder, remove all the tier 2 resources out of it. Although I think a better option, like I said, would be get the grinder out of the process, just let people dry the grub leather, or just craft it by hand like you can with the other leathers. So now with that out of the way, let's jump into the game real quick so we can look at some of the armors, and we're going to talk about the upgrades and the ones that I tested up most of them, and I'm going to give my honest opinion on the upgrades. So real quick before I jump into a custom game and just talk about some of the the sleek upgrade bonuses, what I want to do is just show, this is my main survival world, the one that I have several hundred hours in, the one that I farmed a bunch of grubs on. Now on this playthrough, let me check my armor. I did upgrade my spider armor. I think I started upgrading so I have level 3 antlion armor. I did level up my spider armor. I think I have the helmet at level 6. The chest piece and the shoulders and the leg piece for the spider at level 3. So that's where I am in terms of that. What are these? Leather scraps, leather plate. Okay, this is a plate. So I just wanted to show my chest and show that I haven't done any farming for berries since I started the public test server, and I don't think I did any. I'm pretty sure I didn't get any. Maybe I got a couple pupas when I was up there. Yeah, I think I did get a couple pupas, but I didn't even turn them in the leather yet. But as you can see, I burned through all of the grubs I had, and this is what I have left. These are leather scraps, so these are going to get burned through very quickly in terms of upgrading. Look at all the berries I have. And then we have berry leather scraps here, and berries are so much easier to get than grubs. It kind of makes no sense to have the bulk of the upgrade be I guess pupas are less plentiful than the grubs, but like the first level of upgrade should be like berries are basically equivalent to quartzite. You can get tons of quartzite, which means you can level up your weapons from 1 to 5 very simply. You cannot get tons of grub hide without sitting there and just every day going back and hoping the grubs are there and getting it. There's no like guaranteed you're going to get grub hide every day, whereas there is a 100% guarantee that you will get quartzite when it respawns in those locations, and you should get about the same amount because the same number of nodes spawn every time. Berries, the same number of berries spawn every time, so you can get a ridiculous amount of berries, and you can't get grub hide. So with that out of the way, let's go take a look at the actual set bonuses and talk about the issues with those. All right, so what I want to do now is just quickly talk about the sleek bonuses. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, so I'm going to try to get through this pretty quickly. I think I talked about this in one of my previous videos, and I went over it extensively in my live streams if you're interested in hearing everything. But the gist of this is basically going to be, number one, as I just mentioned a minute ago, the only way to see what the sleek bonus is going to be, and you'll see the sleek is down here at the bottom. So for example, for the clover armor, you're going to get plus regenerate, which means you regenerate health over time. The only way to see what that actually is to get your armor piece up to level 5, and then when you go to the smithing station, the sleek path will tell you what it is. That's problem number one. You're basically going to invest a lot of resources just to get to that point. Number two problem with the upgrades is that they are underwhelming. So in general, all of the bonuses here, regenerate, grass harvest speed. Some of them are more useful than others. Like real quickly, the regenerate will be great, but you're probably never going to use it because you're not going to upgrade clover armor. The red ant is decent. It does actually work on weed stems, so you possibly could use this, especially if you like building. You're probably not going to level up grub goggles, and you're probably not going to level up acorn mask, because why would you level up tier 1 armors when by the time you get enough grubs and by the time you're able to actually make the grub plates, you're going to probably be on to one of the tier 2 armors. So that's one of the problems there with these bonuses, is a lot of them don't even matter. Even the ones that are good, like I said, this regenerate will be really good early game, but you're not going to get to it because you're not going to, nobody in the right mind is going to level up clover armor to level 6 under the current system. The tier 2s, healing received, this, like a lot of these, the other problem with a lot of these is on paper, because we don't know exact percentages, we don't know the exact information, like we don't know exactly what we're getting. It just gives these vague things like plus healing received, plus poison damage, plus like what do these actually give us? Plus crit hyper stamina. So as an example here for the ladybug armor, it says plus healing received. Let me put this on real quick and read the description. Increases the amount of healing you receive from all sources. So my question is, by what amount? Is it a percent amount? Is it a fixed amount? Is it based on something else? I have no idea what it's based on, because it just says increases the amount of healing you receive from all sources. So I can tell you that, so if I'm looking at it just on paper, this sounds pretty good. Oh, when I use a bandage, it's going to heal me more. When I eat food, it's going to heal me more. When I drink a smoothie, it's going to heal me more. If I use the mosquito needle, it's going to heal me more. Everything's great. Everything's going to heal me more. The only problem is when I actually put this into practice and tested it, it was awful, specifically for the mosquito needle. Someone suggested a tank build of using the ladybird armor, going up the sleek path to level 9 with a max level mosquito needle, and asking how viable it was. And I can tell you, and if you want to see the video footage, go check my last stream, it was not viable at all. The amount of healing you get from it is so little that it just makes it not viable. So while this does sound like a good bonus, again, because it's so vague, we don't know what it is, you're just going to have to sit there and test it, and through trial and error, figure out if it's good or not. How many resources are you going to invest to get to that point? I mean, you're going to have to get at least to level 6 on one piece of it, and then you're not going to get the full bonus because you get it. It does stack, but it's just not that great. And then, like I said, some of these other ones are just not useful at all. The poison damage is very weak. Again, we can see this one actually just multiplies it, so it's pretty simple. This just increases your poison damage by a factor of, if you have one piece on it, I don't know, if it increases by a certain amount, then it doubles, triples, whatever, you have the full set on. So that one is, at least you understand what it is, but poison damage is so bad that it doesn't matter. These other ones, I tested the koi scale armor because I thought it was going to be good. I didn't like it. The only one I have not tested is the bee armor. So this looks good on paper, but again, not sure. I was very underwhelmed by the black ant armor. Very underwhelmed by the roly-poly. It's not even useful for these bonuses here. They kind of nerf that to the ground. Basically, it's only useful because it has the most provides you the most resistance. This one seemed okay, but I didn't test it a lot. I don't know what the thirst rate is going to be. Marksman's cap. This is just kind of backwards here. Basically, now you're not going to be able to kill scarabs anymore unless you have the marksman's cap leveled up, because you're just not going to be able to do it. I don't think you're going to be able to do enough damage. I'm going to test it to see if I can get a crossbow to level 5 without I think basically what you're gonna have to do is you might be able to if you get the crossbow to level 7, you're not gonna be able to do it above that because you need the scarabs. You're not gonna be able to kill scarabs, so this is kind of ridiculous. The bow attack should be up here, and this should be down here if you want to do something like that. Mask of the Mother Demon, I've talked about this a lot. I'm not gonna go into this much. This has a chance of poisoning, so again with the chance stuff, and then this just does a chance to have some kind of poison explosion. The only time I found that useful was against red ants. Everything else, the amount of damage it did was kind of pointless. The same with using this with the armor, the spider shoulders and spider legs was just very underwhelming, even at max level with good weapons. It didn't make any difference. It was just easier to just use another weapon that didn't have poison and kill things almost equally as fast or even at the same speed. But anyway, I think one of the things that I would like to see specifically is going to be for these bonuses, I would like to know, like right here is a great example. What percent is it a percentage or is it a fixed amount? Just put that in the description. That's number one. Number two, I think this would actually be helpful too, real quick, is as you're leveling up your armor, so let's go over here to the smithing station and just hit level up. We're going to do the ladybug one just as an example. So right now you're going to see when I go from level 6 to 7, what it's going to do is it's going to give me 5% extra defense and 5% more durability. It doesn't impact this at all. Why does it not impact that at all? Like, why do we not get this? Like, let's say as a default, when you get to the healing receive, let's say the first one is 10% healing. And then every level after that, so 7, 8, and 9, you get another 10% or something, or maybe 5%. I don't know what the appropriate percentage is, but at the very least, this would be a nice buff here is if this also went up by a certain percentage. So this should say plus whatever percentage it is, and then this should go up by 5% each level. That would make it, that right there would solve some of the problem here of having so many of these armors being underwhelming. Because right now, I will tell you that from my testing, I honestly do not have a really good opinion on which armor to use because they all suck. They just all suck. In general, the armor, you feel like you're wearing paper mache. The enemies do a lot of damage to you, and the bonuses don't really seem to make much of a difference. They're not noticeable. It's hard to tell what they're doing because we don't know what percent chance it is. It'd be much easier to decide what to use and what not to use, what to test out and what not to test out if we were given concrete amounts of what things do, and also just to buff them. So that's kind of like just a quick look at the armor pieces here and the bonuses. A couple of ones I don't have on here. I will say that as an example, like I feel like the regenerate here would be really useful if you could actually upgrade this armor, or if you actually would. This will probably be useful later on for people that like to build. Beyond that, the ones that I haven't shown, the Firefly Headlamp has a good bonus. It has a similar bonus to this. It's like plus rock harvesting speed or something like that. So you can break rocks faster. It does work on quartzite. This grass one does work on stems. So those are both seem useful because you would use the Firefly Headlamp when you're down in a cavern, I guess, if you want to, for harvesting. That would be decent if it reduces the hits by 1. I didn't test it on candy, so I'm not sure if it works on those. Usually it doesn't. All the underwater gear felt pretty decent, although again, it didn't really tell me about how, like what it was doing. Like they were all revolving on stamina, like either getting stamina back, using less stamina, stuff like that. So again, having those percentages there would be useful. And if you're leveling them up, getting the extra bonus will be useful. I think that would be helpful. So that's just kind of looking at those overall. Now, what I want to do real quick is I want to just real quickly just bring my little notepad over here. So what I want to do real quick is I just want to like quickly highlight what I think the main issues are and how they can be solved. And actually, one thing I didn't mention, although I did touch on it briefly earlier, was the progression. So I kind of feel like the progression is just really disjointed right now because like I said before, before these upgrades were added, you would start the game and you would naturally progress from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 by completing the labs, encountering the tougher enemies, getting the new resources, and you would just go through them, and it felt pretty smooth. It wasn't great. To be honest, I felt like the progression through the game was really quick at the beginning, and it did need some adjusting. But now I feel like it's going on the opposite end of the spectrum, and it's kind of like you're going to get tier 1 stuff at the beginning because you have to have something, but you're probably just going to get rid of it as fast as you possibly can and never upgrade it because why would you waste your resources on it? Get to tier 2 as quickly as possible. Upgrade that just enough maybe to then get to the tier 3 stuff, and maybe you like some of the tier 2 stuff better, but overall like the tier 3 weapons just outperform the tier 2 and tier 1 in almost all circumstances. I'm sure there's some like specific situations with certain mutation and food and smoothie combinations where it might make some of the things more better, like the stinger spear or the mosquito needle. Maybe those could but in general, the tier 3 stuff is better than tier 2, which is better than tier 1. So what ends up happening is right now you're just getting funneled into how fast can I get to the tier 3 stuff, and don't ever touch any of the other stuff like the weapons and the armors that are over here. So from progression wise, it feels kind of disjointed. Like I showed in the chart at the very beginning, it kind of felt like a smooth progression before. Now it's like you go, and then at some point you're going to hit a wall, you're going to have to stop, and then you're going to hit a wall. And it just feels almost like a grindy RPG or like an MMORPG where it's like, oh, you're going to get a DPS check here. You're not going to be able to beat this thing until you go back and spend 10 hours grinding out fights or resources to get your stuff up to the appropriate gear. This isn't an MMORPG. This is not an RPG. This is a survival game. I'm cool with it having RPG mechanics in it, but I don't understand the path they're going in terms of the progression. So that's kind of my overall general thoughts on the progression. But let's really quickly talk about the big problems in the game right now with the armor upgrades. So we have the armor upgrades. So the first problem is going to be that they're too expensive. Actually, no, the first problem is they are gated behind basically tier 2 crow feathers, right? Crow feathers / insect axe. Now, if you're an experienced player with dozens of hours, or like me or some of you, hundreds, some people may have thousands of hours, we could probably go get an insect axe very quickly. There's ways of getting it without having to kill stuff. I'm pretty sure you can probably still cheese your way to getting it by killing beetles, but I mean, you can go in the hedge and just break all the spiderlings, this web sacks, and possibly, if you get lucky with RNG, get enough stuff to just make it, I'm pretty sure. If not, you can probably just go cheese some of the beetles or ladybugs or something with a bow and get it. But the average player is going to now, if they even know about the upgrades, because that's another thing the game needs to tell you about them. It'd be nice if Burgle talked about them. But that's another story. Basically, you're gated behind tier 2 crow feathers for armor upgrades and the axe. So you're not even going to make the grinder because even though you can unlock it with the flower powders, you can't craft it because you can't get the resources you need for it, which means you now need to get tier 2 gear to get it. So that just kind of makes it where more likely than not, you're not going to upgrade any of the tier 1 armors, because by the time you actually get to the tier 2 insect axe, you're going to have killed tier 2 enemies, and now you're going to have tier 2 armor. So that's problem number 1. So how do we fix that? The ways to fix that are remove the grinder completely. That will be my biggest suggestion. Remove the grinder completely. Well, actually, no, we'll say this. Remove scraps. So no grinder. So no grinder needed, right? So if you remove the scraps from the equation and just let us put the grub hides and either craft them by hand with the workbench or put them on the jerky rack, although the jerky rack does require tier 2 parts, but at least you could craft them by hand, maybe make it cheaper than they are right now, maybe make 1 grub hide turns into 3 leather or something like that. I don't know. Something may reverse because it's tier 1. That's number 1. That's a problem. So you could either do that, or you could remove the feathers from the recipe. Kind of like how they removed the charcoal chunks from the oven recipe. So now you don't need charcoal chunks for the oven recipe. So all those people who spent, like, what was it, 8 charcoal chunks or some crazy number to build all those ovens before this update, yeah, don't do that. Make sure if you're not in the public test server, don't make any ovens. The ovens are much cheaper to make now, although they still do require boiling glands, but at that point in the game, it's not going to be a problem to get them. So if they could do that, that's problem number 1 solved right there. I think would be easy enough to do that. What's the next problem? The next problem is that they are too expensive. So they cost way too much grub in general, right? So like we said, berries very plentiful, like quartzite. So overall, while I'm like kind of like on the fence about the weapon upgrades at this point, at least I can get my weapons upgraded. In the new playthrough that I started yesterday, just to test out the progression a little bit, I was able to get a decent amount of quartzite. So what I ended up doing was I upgraded my sprig bow to level 4 and upgraded my pebblet spear to level 2. I just did that because I have no intention of continuing this playthrough all the way through. I just wanted to test it at the beginning. Now, again, as a normal, and that was because I got as much raw science as I could and only bought the smithing station. I would surmise that the average player, when they see the first all the options of choosing what to buy from Burgle's Swap Shop at the beginning, because there's a bunch of them on there, most of which are building things. This game has been, building is one of the bigger things in this game. It's one of the more popular features. It's one of the things that lots of people do. They're going to be attracted to it. If you go look up stuff about Ground, you're going to see all kinds of cool builds. So I think an average person's going to come in here and be like, I want to build cool bases, because that's what a lot of people like to do in sandbox games, survival games in general, right? So when you have 10 building options and then you have the smithing station, you're like, whatever. What's to say they're going to not just go buy all the building options first and then not be able to upgrade their weapons? So it's that's kind of, so you can do it, right? So you can do it, but like I couldn't upgrade any of my armor because I didn't want to have to go fight tier 2 enemies in order to get the axe. So I said, I'm just going to progress through it like I would as if I didn't know about the armor upgrades, even though I did use the weapon upgrades. And the lab was still challenging. I almost died to a taste heal, like I said earlier. It did a 3-hit combo on me and almost killed me. So, and I got lucky and didn't have any, or we were juniors. But the average player is going to go in there with no armor upgrades, probably no weapon upgrades, and what's going to happen? So even if you do want to upgrade your armor, you can't, like I said before, but if you could, it's too expensive. How long is it reasonable to expect someone to spend just to be able to upgrade any armor? So it's too expensive. So what can we do? I think honestly, to be number 1 would be the grub, removing the scraps. I think will be better. So step 1, we're going to remove scraps from the equation. That's just easy. That just takes a step out of the process. Number 2, grubs have 100% chance to drop, I would say 3 to 5 hides. And then we're going to say grub leather can be made at the workbench. And at I would probably say I don't know, a 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. What do you think is fair? 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 ratio? So as right now, like if you make berry leather or pupa leather, it's 3 to 1. I would make it reverse because grub leather is a pain in the butt to get. So you would be getting every grub hide you would craft would turn into 2 leather or 3 leather or maybe 5. I'm not sure what the right ratio is. That would be helpful. Remove the larva from around the oak tree and the what is it? The quartzite cave. Quartzite cave near spawn. That gives you 2 safe places at the beginning of the game to be able to grab yourself quartzite, to grab yourself some grubs without having to worry about digging up 50% of them being larva. That would help right there. So I think that alone would make it helpful. I would also say the costs need to be reduced. We showed those before. Like, it should not take 92 plates in order to make it. So, I mean, I don't know what's appropriate. I would say reduce grub plates by somewhere between 33 and 67%. I don't know what the exact right percentage is. I think it would be best if they just kind of like mess with the percentages and let us test it out to see what feels right. But at the very least, we got to reduce them even with these up, because let's be honest here. You want people to upgrade things, and you want people to upgrade stuff. If you added a system in the game, you want people to be able to access it early and access it often to get the most use out of it. If it's something that you can't access until 3/4 away through the game, what the hell's the point of having it in this? There's no point even having it. So I think that alone would address it. I'm okay with the cost of the berry leather, although I will say this. I think this would make sense. Remove glove plates from berry plates. Same for, and what's that? And remove berry plates from pupa plates. Why there's a need to have an overlap there doesn't make any sense. It would be equivalent for like the armor, for the weapon upgrades. I shouldn't even say this because they might put it in. It would be equivalent of having for weapon upgrades, having, as you go up to just adding more like quartzite to it, right? Like why would you want to do that? Like requiring quartzite at every single level, just in addition to the candy stuff. Like why? No, let's just not do that. Let's just have the globs be the globs, where you put them in there and make them. Let's just have the leather be the leather, and we don't need to have any overlap in them. And if you want to have the overlap, you need to make them much cheaper to craft. So I think that would solve most of those problems. So the third problem, so far we have it's gated behind tier 2 stuff, so we can possibly fix that. It's too expensive. And another problem is going to be no one will ever upgrade tier 1 or most tier 2, right? Like when are you going to upgrade any of the armors that we talked about? Who is going to upgrade the clover armor? No one. You're going to, if you even craft clover armor, you're going to go get one of the other armors pretty quickly. You're never going to sit there and grind. I mean, I guess I can't say never. In general, I don't think that an average person is going to sit there and spend 3 hours digging up grubs to upgrade clover armor, only to find out that all these other armors are just so much better than them. Why the hell would you do that? Because you're going to get acorns pretty quickly. You're going to get grubs pretty quickly. You're going to get grubs just by having to upgrade the other armors, and you're going to get the acorns by just going over to the oak tree, most likely. So you're going to end up analyzing those, see they have better armor, and the clover armor becomes useless. So what ends up happening is, like I said, these become pretty useless. So how can we solve that? There's a couple ways of doing this. I think the things I've mentioned above would probably help with that. It also might make sense to make perhaps upgrade. How about this? Upgrade costs are tier based. So as an example, something like, we'll do something like a tier 1. So like tier 1 costs X amount. Then you could do tier 2 costs 2X. And then you do tier 3 costs 3X. So that you actually have a reason and an ability to upgrade the each level or each tier, rather than skipping through them. Because let's be honest, what's the point of having these things in here? What's the point of having tier 1 anything if people are just going to blow through them and not even use them? There's no point. These were all that existed when the game started. Or, well, they weren't all that existed, but they were useful when the game started. Now they're becoming completely pointless because they're being basically just overcome by the new stuff that's coming out. So that's a possibility. Upgrade costs could be tier based, so they're lower. Another thing that someone suggested, I believe on the Discord, was tiers only have one upgrade. So one-time upgrade, that could be an option where you basically just get the resources needed and you just upgrade it one time and it gets it back to max. I'm not sure that that's going to be a path that developers are going to go down. It seems kind of like, I don't know. Another option would be tiers have 1, 2, or 3 upgrades based on tier. So basically tier 1 you could upgrade one time, tier 2 you could upgrade 2, and tier 3 you could upgrade 3. That would mean that to get the tier 1s to whatever, basically whatever level 9 is right now, would be, let's say tier 1s only go up to level 5, and you could get to level 5, like the tier 1 armors and weapons would only go up to level, we're just going to talk about armors. They would just go up to level 5. That would be one, that's tier 1. Tier 2 armors could go up to level 7, and tier 3 could go up to level 9. If they had tiers after that, they can go up to whatever they want. Or they could just be like they can just be upgraded 3 times, so they can have their stats boosted one time, 2 times, 3 times. That will be useful. I think that kind of would make some of them more useful. If you have any other ideas for this one, let me know in the comments down below. Another one's going to be that another problem is that the armor feels like, what are we gonna call it? Paper mache? Can I spell mache? I think that's how you spell mache. I don't know. It's good enough. Mache. We'll just say, as someone said on the Discord, feels like wet. We'll just call it wet toilet paper. That's what that is the description that someone put on the Discord of what it felt like. The reason for this is the bugs had their damage buffed, and we had our defense reduced. So we just feel like we're glass cannon. I guess, is it glass cannon is the term or something? I feel like I'm Glass Joe from Mike Tyson's Punch Out, if anybody remembers that from back, or whatever the punch outs were after that. Essentially, I have a glass jaw. Like, I can possibly knock you out if I get my hits in, but if you hit me one time, I'm going down. Like, that's what I kind of feel like. I feel like a boxer who can throw a punch, but I have no defense at all. And if you hit me and I don't block it or I don't dodge it, I'm just dead. And this isn't Dark Souls. This isn't Elden Ring. This isn't a FromSoft game. If I want to play a FromSoft game, I will go buy Elden Ring and play it. And I will die 100 times, and then I'll beat the boss. And I'll die 100 times and beat the boss. I don't want to die 37 times fighting a Bombardier Beetle. And I don't want a new player to do that either, because I'm probably not going to have that problem, because I know ways around getting things. I know all the bug attacks, but a new player experience, I'm kind of trying to think in that realm too. When this game goes 1.0, there's going to be an influx of new players. We definitely want them to have a good experience, so they stick around and play through the whole game. So armor feels like wet toilet paper. What's the problem? I kind of feel like the base defense, resist, whatever you want to call it, needs a massive buff. That's step one. Like, I'm not saying take it all the way back to what it was before, but maybe a third of the way or half the way as it was before, especially for the lower tier armors where they're just like useless. Like I said, I don't think in max level armor, anything should be able to one-shot me if I don't block. Nothing. I don't care if the Black Ox Beetle is like getting hit by a boss. I should not almost get one-shot by it. Now, I did read someone was saying if you use Spicy Safety, it will help out. And there's other things, which that's perfectly fine. But we don't know what the bug's damage type is. So that's trial and error as well. That would be helpful, but that's another thing. So we need to have the base defense, and resist needs a massive buff. In addition to that, I kind of feel like it almost feels like, I'm trying to think about how to say this, is like when you're upgrading them, going up by like 5 or 10% when they've already been nerfed down just feels so weak. It kind of feels like max level should be better than before, right? Because the bugs have had their damage increase. How can you increase the enemy's damage output and decrease your defense output? That's not even I don't know how you even properly test it. You could do one or the other. You could lower our defense, keep the bugs the same, increase the bugs attack, but leave our defense the same. Instead, they've nerfed our defense and buffed the bugs, and it's just crazy. The amount of damage the bugs are doing. I can't, at this point, I've been talking so long, I can't even remember, but like, as an example, mosquitoes are like, they're just like, they just shred you. They're like little ninjas. They come in, hit you. You try to hit them with a weapon and whiff. Then they fly back up. And then you try to pull your bow out. By the time you shoot them with the bow, they're coming in and hitting you with a 3-hit combo, and then you're dead. Like, I died in my main survival role with my armor, with my level 6 helmet and my level 3 shoulders and legs, to a mosquito because it hit me with a 3-hit combo when I had full health and meat shield on. It was ridiculous. And like I was talking about before, like the roly-polies can hit you for 75% of your health. The Black Ox Beetles can almost one-shot you. The Ladybird Larva, if 2 of them attack you at the same time, you're dead in one combo from them if each of them hit you 3 times. So like, it just feels like the armor needs a buff overall, so maybe the max level should be better than before. So it's actually, we're getting a reward. Why are you taking away something we had and then making us have to grind to get back to worse than it was before? That is not fair, and no one wants to do that. Why would you? I'd be like saying, I'll pay you $10 to cut the grass today with a lawnmower. Oh, next week when you cut the grass, I'm going to make you use scissors, and I'm only going to pay you $5. No one's going to sign up for that. It makes absolutely no sense. If I'm going to gut you like that and say I'm only going to give you scissors, you damn well better give me $15 for doing it instead of the 10. Like, you need, if you're gonna, I don't have a problem with the way putting grind in the game, but it needs to have some type of fulfillment at the end and get something out of it. You can't just add grind for the sake of grind, add time to the game, and then also nerf it so it just makes the game artificially harder and artificially longer. It's kind of silly. I think that's basically it for the armors. I don't even know, like, or basically for the armor, for how weak they feel. The armor bonuses, this is another one we're going to talk about. Armor bonuses, they are just generally awful. Like, I tested out almost all of them, and they were so bad. Like, we first of all, these are things we need. Need exact percent or amounts. No more chance. No more chance, right? I don't want this chance crap in my thing anymore. I don't want anything with chance. I want to know the exact amounts. And same thing for the damage amounts. If it says it adds X amount of damage, tell me what it is. Like when it says crit, what does crit do? I think crit does double damage. Why can't it just say it does 100% more damage? We need the exact percents or amounts. Armor bonuses should increase as armor is upgraded. I think that's fair to say. Like I said, like so for the antlion armor, it gives you you get thirsty slower. Let's say at level 6, it reduces your thirst by 25%, and then each level up it goes down 5% more. So then eventually get whatever it gets to, 45, 30, 35, 40. So you're at 40% less thirst drain. I want to know that, and I want it to go up every level. At this point, I'm only getting is like a 5% buff in defense and durability. That's just whatever. Like give me the bonuses on top of it, and then we'll feel like we're actually strong again and not just be weak. And then I think a lot of them need to be reworked. They just need to be reworked so that they actually make sense. And there shouldn't be any of the reworked and no redundant. I don't know. Let's say reworked. I mean, like I said, most of them are reworked. They're underwhelming. Poison's underwhelming. The healing's underwhelming. The crit chances feel like they're underwhelming. Everything just feels underwhelming. And I'm almost wondering if the reason they don't tell us the exact numbers is because they don't want us to see the exact numbers. Because if we saw that, I don't even know what these are. Like if they said, let's say they said the healing amount was 5%. Well, you're going to look at that and be like, well, that's stupid. I don't want healing. Like 5%, what do I care about that? But if it said it was 25% or 30%, you'd be like, okay, that's decent and I can level it up. But if going from level 6 to 9 takes me from 5% and I end up with 5% or 10% and I end up with 10%, doesn't feel that great. But if I go from 10 to 25 or 25 to 35, 40, whatever, like that just feels better. I can see it, I can test it and stuff like that. So I definitely think they need to be reworked. Some of the ones that I would say are completely useless are the spider armor just sucks. Like why? If you want to make a poison build, just give us a full set of Mother Demon armor. That way the Brood Mother armor. Then we can just go a full poison build. Get the poison crap off the spider stuff. It makes no sense. It's useless against, like I said, all the spiders in the game. If you're not using a poison weapon, it's even more useless. So make the spider one back to movement speed, make it actually useful again. That's a compromise, I think, is a fair compromise. It already has lower defense resistance in the tier 3s, but if you put movement speed on, it will kind of counteract it. The koi one, like I said, I was not even noticeable, the buff I was getting from that. I didn't test the B one yet. The black ant armor, again, didn't feel like I was getting much benefit out of it. I think all of them need to be reworked, reworked, and buffed. Like, no more nerfing. Just stop nerfing things. If you want to do something like buff enemies, but like don't buff the enemies and nerf us at the same time. That's just not a good feeling. And you know, at the end of the day, if someone's watching this 6 months from now when this game's complete, possibly this might not be completely irrelevant. But as we're going through like the early access and public test servers and stuff like that, it just doesn't feel good to feel like you're just being bullied around by the enemies in the game when before we were doing the bullying, and they went from too easy to too hard without any kind of steps in the middle. So yeah, the bonuses, that's probably all I have to say about the bonuses. Those are the main things I think need to be fixed with armor upgrades. We cannot gate them behind tier two, any kind of tier 2 resources. They are too expensive. No one's ever going to upgrade most of the tier 1s or most of the tier 2s because of them being too expensive, and because they also are so weak in terms of like making us feel like we're just glass soldiers. The armor, like I said, armor feels like wet toilet paper. Good analogy there. We just feel like we're dying too quickly. And the armor bonuses, to just put it bluntly, they suck. They just all suck from what I've seen. And like I said, on paper, I was like, oh man, some of these sound good. And then I went into a custom mode and tested them. I'm like, basically what I'm getting forced into doing is just use the roly-poly armor or the antlion armor. They give you the highest defense, and the bonuses don't even matter because the bonuses are completely useless on all the rest of these. In most situations, you're just going to die. So in order to get through the game, like with relative ease, or at least being able to go back to like earlier parts of the game with relative ease, like if you go back through the like and fight 3 or 4 mosquitoes at the same time, you're not surviving in probably any of these armors, maybe in the tier 3s, but like it's just not happening. So I don't know. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover in this video. Now I've talked way longer than I was originally going to, but those are the main bullet points I think that need to be addressed. As for the story, personally, I have no idea why they made us go back through the story again. It served no purpose other than to waste like 5 hours of my time. I got nothing out of it. Only thing they changed in the labs, spoiler alert, is the biometric scanners are now in every lab. The one thing I didn't mention was I did do the pond. The pond lab is going to be exponentially harder for a new player, because if you don't get from dropping down in the water in the right place to the actual pond lab and do the biometric scanner, you are dead. Like, you have to go in there, hit all the air jets, the little bubble jets that get you there just to get there in time with the gill tubes, or you're dead. Like, you're just not going to survive. So, and that was with fighting no enemies. I didn't even have if the enemies were on, I had to fight the enemies, that would have been even worse. So it was like, yeah, there just needs to be rebalancing. I don't, like I said, when they're done, if they fix the weapon upgrade or the armor upgrade stuff, I will definitely be, I'll be more interested in playing through again. I do plan on playing through again anyway, I want to see what the progression feels like overall. My general sense is that playing through the stuff on my main save just felt like I still felt like I was a little weak, even though I had overpowered weapons and stuff like that. In most situations, the only thing that felt trivial was when I fought the assistant manager and I killed him in 6 hits with a like level 8 Club of the Mother Demon that was salty. He didn't even get to phase 2. I just sat there and tanked him and killed him. That was kind of funny. But like some of the other labs, I took a lot of damage. I almost died because I wasn't being careful because I thought it was overpowered. And then starting over fresh, it felt like I know exactly what to do. I avoided all the spiders. I know exactly how to get from the mysterious machine to the hedge without having to run into anything. And I avoided all contact if possible. I ended up, like I said, no Orb Weaver Jr. spawned in for some reason. I don't know why. What ended up happening was I was going over and I went across the first zip line, and then I saw raw science and I was going to hop up and get it, and I missed and I fell to the ground. But then I was able to just jump up the mushrooms and get back up on top, and I went through the lab. So I didn't go into the computer first. I ended up getting all the passwords before I even turned on the computer. So I'm not sure if that caused the Orb Weaver Jr.'s not to spawn. And also the robots that were in there, I was able to cheese most of them, because if they follow you outside, you can get them, if you kite them outside of the little tunnels they're in, they're like, they must have some kind of like gravity thing pushing them up. Once they're outside of the enclosed hallways, they will just fall straight to the ground and you don't have to fight them. So you literally kite them one by one out there. That'll probably be fixed at some point, but that's the only reason I survived, because when there were 3 of them at a time, if all 3 of them hit me, I'm dead. Like, I'm just dead because I was wearing level 0 armor. So anyway, the story progression, I'll give more feedback on that once I play through the entire thing. But the overall progression through the game, like I said, it just feels like they're putting in artificial road bumps just to make it take longer to get from point A to point B. And the armor thing is my main thing right now. I did like I will finish this up by saying, so far I've liked the mixers and the base raids. Hopefully they fix this stuff. I do want to spend time on that stuff before the public test server's over, so I can hopefully give some feedback on that, because I've only done 1 mixer and only had 1 base raid, and I want to mess around with the wafters too to see how they work and give feedback on that. That's so far been my favorite addition. Just make the mixers repeatable and I'll be happy, I think. But as for the armor upgrades, this is the big sticking point here, and I'm a little bit concerned because we had a similar situation with the last update where it was universally disliked with the change to the combat, putting in the 3-hit combo system. There were some people that were like okay with it, but in general, most people did not like the 3-hit combos. That was put out there pretty strongly, and it still exists in the game right now. So I know they'll probably listen to this. They'll probably listen to our feedback, and they may make some changes. I really do hope that the ratio that they do something, make the armor upgrades need to have a lot of work done to them. And if that means making the public test server an extra 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, I don't care. Just do that before you push it out to the masses, because from my experience, only about 15 to 20% of the people actually play the public test server. And with Xbox having all the crashing issues, that might be even less this time. So there's only a small percentage of people testing this stuff out, and it's going to get thrown out to everybody else. And they're going to be like just slammed with this stuff and probably not be happy with it. So put it on us to hopefully get the developers to make some adjustments. I'm sure they're going to look at this stuff anyway. But anyway, I've talked for entirely too long. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Hit the like button down below if you found the video helpful or interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think about this, and I'll make sure to pass along anything to the developers. You can always go over to the Grounded Discord, into the public test server area down there. There's channels for it. Provide your feedback and suggestions, as well as report any bugs. So I'll leave a link for the Grounded Discord in my description down below if you're not sure where that is, to head over there and leave your feedback there directly. And you can also comment on this video or reply to them on social media or Reddit. They read everything, and they do read stuff. Whether or not they actually do anything with it, that's up to them to decide. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.